Um, So I'll introduce myself. I'm Katie Grondin. I'm the superintendent for RSU4. And thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time out to be part of the process for the school budget this year. We're going to start with the public hearing, which is on the school revolving renovation funds projects. So we heard loud and clear from communities that if there's funding out there, could you look at that? And so we saw that the school revolving loans were out again for schools to apply. And so we looked at what could we apply for. And this year, the main DOE was taking it on priority 1 projects. And so we looked at doing ADA, which is the American Disabilities Act items that we could address in 2 of our buildings. What you need to know about these revolving loans, and we heard this week that the governor is pushing to put $50 million in this fund and also extend it beyond priority 1, but also priority 2, 3, and 4. So we definitely have projects that are on our capital improvement list that we will be looking at possibly doing, because it's a wonderful opportunity for schools to save money and get projects done. So about the fund, there's 0% interest loans. This cycle, they're 5-year loans. The part that's forgiven is 65% of the loan is forgiven, and then the school department repays 34.37%, and that's based on what we receive from local, from our ED 279 funding. That's the percentage that they use. So the school board decided to do 2 projects. One is at Sabattis Primary School. So we worked with CHA, who was our engineer firm for the new school project, and they put these applications in for us. And so this was for the actuator doors, the front, so when somebody is in a wheelchair or needs help with opening a door, that actuator will be there. And then renovating one of the bathrooms in the central area of the building. So if you go to Sabattis Primary, it's not the main entrance, but the second entrance. There's a bathroom there that we will be looking at doing to make it ADA compliant. And then the sinks underneath, we are going to have some insulation put there. So if somebody was handicapped, they wouldn't obviously get burned by the pipes. So putting some insulation there. This is all estimated. Okay, so this is how much it's going to cost us. It's all estimated. So we do an estimation and then we get approved to a total up to. And it's broken into 3 categories. The application is construction and renovation section, which they estimate at $35,000. Then the administrative costs and reserves. So if the project was to go over this contingency, $13,250. And then there's fees and services to work with an architect, to do any of the advertising, $22,000, for a total of up to $70,000. The second project is at Libby Tozier, and I took a picture of the bathroom. And the bathroom is if you go into Libby Tozier and you walk straight, and there's the big mural over here, there's bathrooms across, there's a pre-K student bathroom, and then there's another bathroom. We're talking about that other bathroom. So this is up to $133,000, and then you can see the breakdown of the costs, and they will also be working on an actuator for the front entrance. So we will have to go out to bid, and all that pricing could be adjusted. It could be lower than that. We're anticipating it will be lower than that. And the projects have to go out to bid. And then we work with the loan officer around how much do we need for the project. And remember, that percentage is put first, what will be forgiven, and then what do we have to repay. So right now, if we were to do it for the up to amounts, this is how it would break down. The payments for this loan are not in next year's budget. It wouldn't be until the following budget. So that would be 2024, 2025. We're estimated to repay $24,223 over 5 years, which is $4,844. And this would be if it was at the top. And then for the Libby Tozier project, we have the estimated payback would be $46,002 or $9,000 a year for 5 years. So it's all estimated. And then we go out to bid and we give what the total cost of the project is, and then it's determined how much will be repaid and how much will be forgiven. So this is an additional referendum question in June that we're asking the voters to approve. And this is your opportunity to ask questions or make comments.
Somebody over there.
Do you want to come up to the mic, or do you want, yeah.
Yeah, he had his hand up. Was there a question?
Does someone have a question? Oh, yeah.
Okay, can you come up to the mic?
Are these projects contingent on the grant funding?
Is what?
Are these projects contingent on receiving the grants?
Yes,
And if you don't receive the grants, then the projects don't go?
correct.
Okay.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and move to the budget. That mic you're going to-
I want to welcome everyone to our RSU4 school budget for the 2024. If everybody could please stand and allow the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'd like to go ahead and we'll go down the line and introduce your school board members.
Brandon Richards.
Diane Whalen from Sabattis.
Christy Willett from Litchfield.
Jill Bouchard from Litchfield.
Scott Fife, Wales.
Laura Clifford, Sabattis.
Robert Gayton, Sabattis.
Robert English, Wales.
So the next, I do want to say a few words before we officially go to the moderator. You know, this starts back in March, the development of the budget. And so I do want to thank staff members, our administrative staff, our directors, who are really working hard. You know, we recognized right from the beginning, as we said in our budget booklet, we knew this was a tough year, and we really worked hard to look at all the programming, all the needs, all the staffing, to try to bring this budget in a fiscally responsible way. So I do want to say that because we do know the impact on taxes for this budget. And we really took that seriously to maintain the high quality of education for the students of RSU4. So I do want to say that. And I want to thank many of the staff members coming out tonight as well, and all of you and community members for being here tonight to give your voice for this budget. So for the moderator, taking nominations from the floor. Yes,
I'd like
Robbie?
to nominate Randy Greenwood.
Randy Greenwood has been nominated. Is there a second?
I second that nomination.
Okay, see others. Jill Bouchard has seconded. Any other nominations? All right, I'll close nominations. We need at least 3 people to go out back and put a ballot in to elect Randy as the moderator. So if there are 3 of you that would be willing to go back, I'm seeing 2 people moving. Is there a third? I see a third. ballot box is closed. So Randy, you have been elected as moderator. So next step is to swear the moderator in. Okay. All right. I, Randy Greenwood, do swear that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability the duties incumbent on me as moderator of this annual budget meeting according to the Constitution and laws of the state, and that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that of this state, so long as I shall continue as citizen, therefore, thereof. So help me God. Thank you. Yes, we did all that. See, I sign here, or you sign it? You sign it.
Do you have the ones for the ballot clerks? All right, and do you? All right, could I get the 3 ballot clerks to come back and be sworn? All right, you each have your pens, right? Okay. Okay, raise your right hand. Go ahead.
I didn't hear much harmony in that, Scott.
Okay. I believe so. I have water, yes. I will sign these at the end. Am I going through this, or am I going just by the articles here?
I'm following the same thing. I just didn't know if you wanted a copy of what's going on in front of you.
No,
You
he
don't?
usually just goes by that.
He
Usually just goes by that.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for your vote of support there. I'm glad to be here to be a moderator. I do have a cold, so I'll do the best I can to carry my voice. If for some reason you can't hear me, let me know, and we will repeat. For tonight's meeting, we will be using the Maine Moderator's Manual, A Guide to Town Meeting. I have before me the 7th edition. If there would be a parliamentary question that we run into, we also have Robert's Rules of Orders, the 11th edition, and that would be our second go-to.
Try to give
going to make, I'll recognize Jill to make the motion.
Do I need to say their names?
Yes.
Okay. I motion that we allow Katie Grondin, Kathy Martin, Samantha Garnett Sias, Jonathan Varney, Marco Aliberti, Dustin Miles, Amy St. Pierre, Norma Jean Audette, Jim Palmer, Nancy Dwyer, and Brian Daniels be allowed to speak during this meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? This is just so that the non-resident administrators would be able to answer questions. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your paddle. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 1, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for regular instruction. School Board recommends $7,602,308.53.
So moved.
Yes, sir. For the purpose of? All right. That is your point of information. Hold on just a moment. There is a policy, there's a procedure for that, and I just need to look it up.
I thought we were.
Could you restate your motion? There is that probability. If you're in the order, if you're looking to make a motion to take something out of order, you would need to state that in the form of a motion. It would need to be seconded, and it would be voted upon. So yes.
I move that Article 13 be taken first.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded. The motion on the floor is to take the items out of order and do Article 13 first. Is there any discussion?
Randy? If we take Article 13 out, how do we get to the number if you have to vote on all the different articles to get that number?
So the question that was asked was if we take Article 13 out of order, we would need to make sure that the prior articles that will be voted on potentially afterwards would have to match. That is your question?
Sorry, I made a mistake. I was looking at 14, not 13.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
13 is additional funds.
okay.
So
Still the same thing.
yeah, we still have to do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So the motion on the floor is to take them out of order. We'll vote on that first. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I would speak against the motion. Article 13 is really a recap of what we do through the first 12 articles. To take that article first, the others are going to allow us to expend, so we could be approving to expend lots of funds. But then Article 13 want to come and allow to see what we would be able to raise and appropriate. So I would suggest that if somebody wants to change Article 13, they wait and see what the voters here approve to authorize to expend. Some of these numbers may not stay the same as they're printed and recommended, in which case would drive a new number for Article 13. But to vote on Article 13 ahead of any discussion on what we're going to spend for regular education or other instruction or school administration or buses, et cetera, I think is an inappropriate way to go about handling this budget process.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I believe that that's a difference, a distinction without a difference. If we go down through and vote all of we're allowed to spend this much, and then the body assembled decides not to raise that much money, you're in the same boat. So whether you take it first or you take it last, if the vote is we're not going to raise that money, you can't spend it. So take it first.
Mr. English?
Yeah, I use my second opportunity to address the question. There is a difference, because taking the other articles first allow all of you out there to ask questions and see what's in each one of those articles, what makes it up, and make up your mind on each individual article whether or not the school board has done the right job and come with a budget that's realistic and desired to provide a level of education that your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors' children deserve to have and are going to need to have in order to be successful in the future, so that they're not on the street wandering around with no education and no job, just raising heck, they got nothing to do. So by allowing us to discuss each of the items and then to come up with what we believe is the appropriate amount in each item, and then mirroring that hopefully with Article 13, which could be adjusted then, but then people are voting on a number that they have already reviewed what makes it up and can make a much more informed decision on how they want to vote on 13, instead of just throwing it out there and increasing it or decreasing it or keeping it what it is. So that's my rationale for voting against the motion.
Any further discussion on the motion? Yes, sir.
The way I read on page 3, the regional school unit budget meeting process, I mean, it seems clear that we should take up Articles 1 through 11 first.
I would just clarify, in my opinion, in the chair's opinion, Articles up through Article 11 are only authorized to expend. Article 12 and 13 are where you get into raise and appropriate. So there is a clear distinction there. But we do have a motion on the floor to take an item out of order and go to Article 13 first, and that hasn't been voted on yet. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of taking Article 13 out of order and beginning with Article 13, please raise your ballot. Can I get some ballot clerk help? Please leave your paddles up. (22) Those opposed? (30) 22 in the affirmative, 30 in the negative. The motion fails. I'll repeat Article 1. To see what sum RSU will be authorized to expend for regular instruction, school board recommends $7,602,308.53. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Come to the mic, yes.
Hello, my name is Gene Paul Curran from Sabatis. The only thing I'd like to start all this voting on is for people to realize that, yes, we need to spend money. Yes, things go up, but we have to be concerned about all the citizens of all three, Litchfield, Wales, and Sabatis. I don't know how many you're aware, but there's already 66,000 people in the state of Maine that have received disconnection notices for their CMP bill. And all we're going to do is take that number and increase it. I really want everybody to really concern and think their conscience when they're voting on any type of increase, regardless what it is.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Yes, sir. In the front.
I would propose that this amount be reduced by, say, 600,000. The way that can be done is a combination of cutting staff, but also giving staff members an increase in salary. It's an interesting concept, but sometimes we just have, or we can, cut down on the number of teachers and at the same time give teachers an increase in pay. For instance, if you don't hire one person, you can take that salary and divide it by, say, 33 teachers and give each of those teachers 3% raise. So a combination of efforts is my suggestion so that you can come up with a reasonable budget that people can afford. And I know I'm putting the pressure on the teachers to work harder, but it gives you the opportunity of giving them a little bit more pay to do so.
I will ask, are you making an amendment, or are you just making a suggestion?
I'm making an amendment to decrease the amount by 600,000.
So your amendment would be to read $7,002,308.53. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any discussion?
There was somebody else who had their hand up over it. Heidi Marco.
On this point, how many positions would have to be cut to make that possible?
Well, it depends on the average of the teacher. So if you take an average of 80,000 per teacher. Yeah, so about 7. Yeah, about 6 to 7. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Would all these positions have to be teachers, or can they be staff members of the school as well?
So in this cost center are classroom teachers, and you'll see up there, there are approximately 85 teachers and 5 educational technicians in this cost center. This also, we reduced 3 elementary teacher positions already to reach this. We looked at class sizes across the district, and so we did reduce 3 teaching positions already, and there are no new positions.
Mr. Desjardins.
Guy Desjardins, Town of Sabattis. I know a little bit about the process of putting budgets together and what the school board goes through. I'm a little leery on, although this gentleman's recommendation, I guess, makes a little bit of sense, but I think it would take a lot more thinking and processing before you cut 600,000. I'm not going to say it on a whim, but doing it in the last minute and doing it here tonight. So I'd like to have a little bit better understanding from some board members or the superintendent on what the $7,600,000 encompasses. And, you know, just saying for regular education, regular instruction, doesn't really explain it, at least a little bit of detail, before we cut or try to cut $600,000.
Do you want to go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, so regular instruction is everything that goes on in the classroom. Okay, that's at the classroom level. So each article plays a part in the whole education of a student. So the first one is regular instruction, they call it. It's everything in the classroom. So the major push here is the 85 teaching positions and the 5 educational technicians. And then there's the supplies in the classroom, the books, all of the consumables, anything that the students are using in the classroom are also in there. And then you can see equipment that's needed. That's mostly what's in this cost center. And workman's comp, their salary, the benefits, all of that for those positions in this cost center.
If I could just follow up with that for a second. So if this was to pass, the reductions would have to be done, if you're talking 7 positions, let's say.
Correct.
That would be done throughout RSU4. So you really couldn't say if it's
Correct.
3 teaching positions at Oak Hill High School, 2 positions at the middle school, 1 position at, you know, the elementary school.
Correct.
That all would have to be all worked out,
Yes,
and how the dynamics of the class sizes and locations would be done.
that is correct.
All right. Mr. Parker is next.
No, when you're looking at salary and benefits. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
All right. Yes, sir.
Tom Wood, Litchfield. I would like to compliment the superintendent, who went to great pains throughout the whole budget season to meet with representatives of the 3 towns, built them a battle book that explained each of the items and why. And It's about 3 inches thick. And it's clear and obvious that they've gone through with a very fine-tooth comb and presented a number that fits their educational goals for the season. And to just modify it at this late date, I think doesn't make sense. It might be possible for them to reconsider, but that's going to take time and energy and work to make that happen. And from the information I've seen in the, well, I call it the battle book, it's pretty straightforward and well done. So my recommendation would be vote no on the amendment.
Thank you. We have a question in the back.
Doug at Litchfield. This is more of a comment too. The teaching and faculty, they're highly educated personnel that we can't just cut. If we're concerned about funding this budget, we as a population could maybe do volunteer work to try to cut other aspects of it. We can volunteer to be a bus driver and do it without pay. That would be something that, and you know, you don't require a college degree. And you as an individual in the town could volunteer to do that, where we can't volunteer to be teachers. Teachers go to school and are required to do this job. It takes a lot of time and effort. But there are things that the average taxpayer can do to help to supplement the budget that needs to be passed to cover the salaries of these highly educated people. So I think I am against just amending it for 600,000 too.
All right. Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment, which is a reduction in the line of 600,000? Seeing no more discussion, I'll call for the vote on the amendment. Those in favor of the motion of the amended amount, $7,002,308.53, please raise your paddle. Those opposed? That amendment fails. We do have a motion on the floor for $7,602,308.53. Any further discussion? Yes.
My name is Matt Early, from Wales. I have 2 young daughters in school right now. Oldest one's in 2nd grade. First one just started pre-K this year. Just doing some searching online for some numbers and things like that. There's plenty of information out there. One of the sources I'm going to use right now is Public School Review. And it gives some numbers for RSU4 compared to the state of Maine. Latest update, it doesn't give a month, but it's 2023. Our testing ranking is 1/10, which is at the bottom 50% compared to the rest of the state. Our math proficiency is 68% versus the state of 81%. Reading proficiency is 72% versus the state average of 85%. The student to teacher ratio is 12-to-1, which is on par with the rest of the state, and I feel that's a very good number. I'm not in favor of cutting any teaching or staff positions. The revenue per student in RSU4 is $15,372 versus the state average of $9,971. Spending per student is $14,664 versus the state average of $9,451. I think the only thing that should be going up is our grades at this point.
All right. Is there a question?
Nope, just discussion.
Okay.
So.
All right. I just wanted to make sure I didn't cut you off because I didn't hear a question yet.
Nope, just making a point.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion?
I don't have any children in the school. I don't even have any grandchildren in the school. My reason for being here is strictly rumors. And he actually verified some of those rumors. What can we as citizens, whether your neighbor, your own children, your grandchildren, what can we do other than spend money to improve those numbers? Is that $7,602 and so on and so forth going to guarantee that there'll be a raise in that percentile?
Does anybody from the board want to answer that?
I have just point of information. So as we're looking at that information that Matt shared, does that include cost per special education student? Because I know in looking at the budget, and we went cost center by cost center, we do have a higher level of special education students in our district. We have a lot of outplacement, and when you kind of take those numbers into consideration, it really skews what the average cost per student is. So I would take that number with a grain of salt. I think that Sam could probably give us a more actual number of what it costs per student if that's something that people would like to know.
All right. I want to try to rein in the conversation. We're on regular instruction. That is the motion on the floor. Did you have a follow-up to your question, or did you receive your answer?
So,
I don't think I received the answer.
I
no.
mean, your staff, highly qualified, working hard every single day to make a difference to move those numbers based on test scores. So as you know, with the COVID and our interruption in learning, we continue to strive to have the students learning moving forward. So every year we set goals in our schools for students to achieve. We talk to the students about that goals. Every day, that is why we're here, is to make sure our students are learning. So if you reduce this and you reduce teaching, teachers, you're putting more pressure on that classroom to continue to move forward. We're committed on September 1, when school starts again, with this budget, or where you bring the budget in, we're committed to our students. So we take it very seriously. I'm in classrooms all the time, and everyone's working hard. To say, guarantee they're going up, every day we're working to bring student learning up. Working with each individual student on where they are and where they need to be, and working as teams, and working with parents. So that's a tough question to just say, can you ensure? Every day, that's what we're doing. That's our job.
That being said, I do not challenge the credibility of the work that the teachers are putting in place. All I'm challenging, based on rumors, I'm not going to hide anything here, is the fact that the teachers are working their buns off. But what kind of support do they have? That's the question I have. Now, you don't need to answer that. I just want people to remember that as we go through the other points in the budget. Thank you.
Randy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll partially answer that. In learning, there's so many things that are variables. There's social, economic variables. There's situations at home that are variables. So to compare child to child, I would never compare child to child because it's so different. Every home is different. Support at home is a big thing. Supporting the teachers in what their students are learning at home is a big thing. Now, can we sit here and say that, if you pass this budget today, test scores are going to go up? Just like I could not say the Red Sox are going to win the World Series this year because they get the best team on paper. There's a lot of things that go into it, and it's the same thing with education. So to sit here and compare student to student, you can't do it. And yeah, there are anecdotal stories out there, but we graduate kids from Oak Hill every year that go on to prestigious schools, that have great careers, and are, contributing to society every day.
And I'll piggyback. We purposely put in our budget booklet highlights for our educational system. So you can see in our graduation rate has gone from 74.76% in 2017-18 to 86.79%. for our graduation rate. So we're working on all fronts, and that's why we wanted to make sure you knew your tax dollars were doing great things for our students. That was really important for us, for you to see, you know, where our tax dollars are going, especially those who don't have students in the schools. So that was purposeful.
Just to follow up with Mr. Early's comment. So on page 2 is our total enrollment numbers, right? So on page 3 is the total budget, and on page 2 is the total numbers. So some maybe small adjustments to the information you provided.
All right. Is there any other questions on regular instruction? Okay, we have a lot of cost centers to get through, and if you have questions about other cost centers, we can take them then, but if I want to try to make sure that we at least move through the process. Any other questions on regular instruction? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is $7,602,308.53. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 2, to see what sum RSU will be authorized to expend for special education. School board recommends $4,677,731.79. Motion, please. It has been moved.
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion on special education portion of the budget? Yes, sir.
I wonder if we could have a quick overview on the additional amount for this year. I think it's $600,000.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So you can see here, one of the biggest drivers in this cost center is the out-of-district placement. So we have students that attend private purpose schools, and we have tuition that we pay for those students to attend those schools. So tuitions obviously go up each year. And in addition, there was an emergency bill that is still pending around school districts having to pay at 100% attendance rate. And so what we have been doing in previous years is taking the average attendance of our students, and then we budget. So we have been told that we need to be prepared that we will be asked to pay at 100%. So if we don't fiscally do that, and that was recommended by the Maine Department of Education, and they do that, we would not have the funds to pay for that. So this is getting us in line to pay for the 100% tuition rate. And also in this year's budget, from what you approved for this year, we did not budget according to what actually the payments were. So this is a combination of what is needed in order to educate our out-of-district placement students. It also funds 15 special education teachers, 40 educational technicians, a director of special education, admin assistant, and 1 speech teacher. There are no new positions. We reduced 2 educational technician positions to offset as best we could, and it services 251 students with special needs.
Yes.
So you can see we do put revenue in under the revenue for main care reimbursement. And so we're anticipating for this budget season $20,000. We also have state agency client, which isn't really related to this, but we do get funds for that back. And that's what we have for revenue.
Katie, can you expand on what it means for an out-of-district placement Parents just don't come in and say, I don't like RSU4.
Correct. So we do our best to have students, the number one thing is least restricted. So we do our best to have our students with disabilities be in the least restricted. That means they're in the general ed, the regular instruction, so they go to classrooms, they participate in that, and then when they need specialized instruction, they go to a special education teacher. The IEP team, which is Individual Education Programming Team, your team, they sit, they talk as a team, how do we best meet those students' needs? When a student has, we have different programs too that students move through, and when we cannot offer the educational program that they need to move forward, the team makes a decision that what's in best interest of the student is to attend an out-of-district placement, which can be a Margaret Murphy, you might have heard of that, Spurwink, Woodford's, they're collaborative. So we always consider least restricted first and then move up the continuum to meet the students' needs.
Yes, sir. The question was, are we taking in special ed students from other districts?
If we have we may have a student with a superintendent's agreement based on an educational need, but we do not have a program that students attend. Like there are other districts that have regional programs. We do not have a regional program where other school districts send students. Does that make sense?
I'm going to let Bob, does that answer your question?
No. 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 If they are not working out in their district, can they come here to do one of our programs? No. Right. No.
Okay, the answer is no to that. Mr. English first.
Yeah, on getting money back for special ed, part of our ED 279 funding that we get each year is based upon, I think it's a 2-year follow on our special education costs. So I believe, old information, I forget what the percentage is, but I thought it was something like 102% of our special ed cost comes back. Is that still a current number? Usually 2 years following, and those are actual expenses, not necessarily what's budgeted. So special education, we receive more of that in our state funding than we do for regular education. So that's how we get a lot of that money back 2 years later. It rolls in the budget as revenue. It's kind of hard to tell. Everything just keeps rolling and blending in, but it's part of that state funding number that we have in the funding formula.
Go ahead.
I think just a follow-up to that previous comment. So there's 34 that are out of the district on page 2 in the enrollment numbers, and you said there was 251 in Article 2. Out of that 251 students, are any of those 34 in the special ed program? So on page 2, it says there's 34 other. So those are students that are out of the district, right?
Oh, on the bottom there.
So enrollment number is 34.
Mm-hmm.
And then of the 4.6 million in Article 2, you said it was roughly 251 students. So the question is any of those 34 students within that 251 number?
I would have to research that.
Okay.
To be at the top of my head, I don't have that. But I will answer the ED 279. So on when they calculate our formula, this year's we had $3,211,036.63 as part of the formula for special education.
Okay. Yes, sir. Question in the front.
no. It's pretty much the same. I know the director is here, but it's the 19 out-of-district placement is what we have this year, currently. We currently have 19 students, and we're planning for 19 next year. No.
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 So the out-of-district is the same 19,
Oh, 251. Nancy, do you have our special ed enrollment for
Prediction for
Right.
20.
260? Yeah.
And that 251 this year is, are we adding 8 or 10 students annually, or is it multiplying drastically?
No, it's not multiplying drastically, no.
I know that, so I want to circle back to the question earlier about the graduation rate.
Mm-hmm.
We're patting ourselves on the back about graduating more students. How many more students are being graduated through this program through the rest of the year?
These students graduate when they're ready to graduate in the program. So they are following the same graduation. They also, we can educate up to age 20. So it's constantly discussed at the team meeting. So if you're asking what is the special education graduation rate, I would have to get that number.
My 2 points are graduating more in this program, and costs are going up. I consider deciding more students to a much more specialized education. And unless I can make them up in the future bill, I don't see a lot of talk about gifted and talented and addressing the needs of those that actually could be accelerated versus something that's more customized because they're not fitting into the That's my thought.
Okay. Students have to qualify for this service, and it's a rigorous qualification.
all right. Any further questions on special education portion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Recapping, the motion is for $4,677,731.79. All those in favor? Those opposed? I'm going to need some assistance with the ballot counters. We're going to have to start that over again. Article 2, I'm going to recap, but I'm going to need my ballot counters to be helping. The special education portion of the budget was $4,677,731.79. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. $29. Those opposed? $33. 29 in favor, 33 opposed. That motion does not carry.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we, to see what sum the RSU will authorize to expend for special education of $4,676,731.79.
I would declare that not to be in order. It is not. it has to be a
Oh.
different amount. It
It
can't,
was a different
What's a
amount.
different amount? He lowered it by
It
1,000.
was $1,000 less, Randy.
He was,
can,
That's,
Randy, point of information.
we have a point of information.
Katie, can you talk about the federal requirements for special education?
Hold that up.
yep.
right, if this gets reduced to a place that we can't afford, I mean, this would be out of compliance. Yes. We have to, yes.
Just a moment, please. Just a moment, please. So you've answered your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did everyone hear me?
Can you restate your motion?
Article 2, to see what sum the RSU will authorize to expend for special education of $4,676,731.79.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. The chair will remind
Oh, good.
that the motion needs to be, it has been duly seconded, but I'm just going to caution that this could be a long night. That traditionally, it needs to be a significant change. And I would,
Not necessarily, I've been here when I've done this before.
all right, well, all right, any discussion? Mr. English.
All right, so we need to be certain, special education, I've been on this board for 27 years, something like that, long time. Seen lots of budgets. Special education, a lot of people like to go and cut because they think we're treating a few people special and spending a lot of money. And they're right. Just like we treat a few people special that are gifted and talented when we're only supposed to have a certain percentage, and we bring more in than that percentage is into the program so we can give her that education. But these plans and these expenditures are set down by a team. We're required to provide them. If we don't provide them, to your child who says they're supposed to get this and we don't have the money to do it, you will sue us. And you will win, all right? Because that's the law, all right? You'll not only win, but then the board and you taxpayers will have to go and pay the additional lawyer fees and any fines and penalties that are assessed to us. So, and it has happened before. I've been on the board in Wales where we got sued because we didn't provide a student with certain services. We really lucked out on that one, but it's happened before, and it's probably happened in every one of the towns. So this is one of those areas where be careful what you don't fund, because that snake is going to come and bite you, and you can't avoid it. It's the law.
Mr. Parker. There's a motion to move the previous question, which would end debate and discussion. Requires a vote of 2/3 of those present. All of those wishing to end discussion at this time, please raise your cards. Those opposed to moving the previous question. The previous question has been moved. We will be voting on the motion of $4,676,731.79. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? (31 in the affirmative, 36 in the negative). The motion fails. Can you repeat, just holler the number out again? Okay, the motion that was just made was $4,607,731.79. Is there a second? It has been seconded. Questions or discussion?
Yeah, just to let everybody know that we can vote this number in, but if we have more students come in that need special ed help, we're obligated to pay, even though we have a set number in the budget. So we're going to be moving money around at the end of the year to cover up this budget, to fill this hole. And you're taking away from the most vulnerable students that we have.
Motions, right? Mr. Lowsberg in the back.
How much money do we have in the account right now?
How much in the account right now? In the special ed line? Do you mean in the current budget? What's left, what's been expended? Right, are you asking what has been expended? Right, I just want to be clear that we did not budget this year at 100% attendance.
So what is the balance now,
Yeah,
right now?
that's what, yes. Well, a balance, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, just for the cost center, Sam.
While that information is being gathered, was there another question? Mr. Desjardins.
First of all, just let me say this, and it's kind of out of this realm, but whoever volunteered to be a bus driver, please notify the district here because they're badly needed, or any other district in the state of Maine, and we'll show you how easy it is. One of the questions I had for you, Superintendent, Madam Superintendent, is one of the cost factors, especially when you bring students out of district, other expenses, and I deal with this every day on my job, is transportation costs and medical costs.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary of how much it costs. I've transported students from Augusta all the way to Scarborough and points all in between, Oxford, all over. And it's very, very expensive. Now, is transportation also included in this cost, or does it fall under the transportation budget?
It's in the transportation budget.
It is?
Yes.
There's still an expense there, though?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tom has.
Do we have an answer yet, or do we want to continue on and we'll come back? Still looking. Okay.
Tom Wood, Litchfield. The piece of information that's missing here is the one that Mr. English referred to, which is the 2-year lag in the reimbursement. So the real number that we're looking at is, for this particular cost center, is how much we're authorizing to be spent. which is mitigated by the reimbursement we're getting from 2 years ago. So the difference there is what we're going to raise and appropriate to make the program whole for this cycle. Then that number pops up again 2 years later and moves forward. So it's very difficult to say, oh, how much is it going to cost us? Because we already paid, what, $3 million 2 years ago, and that comes back. So it's hard for me to make a value decision based on one number without the background numbers.
Thank you. Do we have an answer for the question about, thank you.
So the voter-approved cost center total last year was $3,990,495. Remaining balance is $627,000 roughly. So that's about 15%, a little bit more than 15% remaining. There are still outstanding invoices and continued expenses that will continue to flow into that cost center throughout the year.
Any further questions on the motion? Right. Any further discussion? Mr. Waterman.
If you take the 251, divide it into the 1,300 students, you get 19% of the student population is in special ed. If you take the 4,607, 77, 76 number that we're voting on, divide it into the 22,453 million, it's 21% of the budget, so that's pretty consistent. And then if you take the state number that I believe Katie said of around 3 million reimbursement of the 11 million that I have calculated, it's 27% reimbursement from the state. So the state is actually weighing the reimbursement for special ed a lot heavier than they do other categories. So it doesn't cost us as much, even though it's a 2-year delay. Just a couple of numbers that I think that they're not out of consistency with the entire budget.
All right. Any other questions or discussion before we vote? In the back.
I would just like to bring the voters' attention to the special ed program at our district. I am not a public speaker, but I can tell you that I am a public special education professional. I teach students with special needs in our district, and I know a lot about how the program runs and how money and funds are dispersed. What I can tell you is our budget this year is not flexible. There have been many things that our special education teachers have asked for that were not approved. It's very, very tight. There are behavior needs. There are behavior BCBA professionals that make behavior plans that we pay for. We have psychologists that we pay for out of district to test students. We have specialized education programs to make their IEPs. Those things cost thousands of dollars. All the materials that are updated that we're able to buy, those programs cost thousands of dollars. So I just ask you to think about those things that are kind of out of our control that special education has to cover. And I really appreciate everyone who supports the special educators here, and your whole team, your whole board is extremely supportive of our teachers, and I really appreciate you for that. And thank you for bringing that to our attention about when things happen, whether it's the needs of our students, goals that aren't being met. When we have a student who has a behavior disorder, an anxiety disorder, a speech disorder, ADHD, a learning disorder, those are all the needs that we have to cover. So just please think about all those students.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on the special ed Article 2? Seeing none, I will recap the motion on the floor is $4,607,731.79. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 3, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for career and technical education. School board recommends $0. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 4, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for other instruction. School board recommends $520,656.33. Motion, please.
So moved.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? Mr. Parker.
So other instruction is co-curricular programs like the Drama Club, Chorus, Future Business Leaders of America, robotics, anything we're offering for students for co-curricular, and then extracurricular programs are all of our athletic sports. And then we have the athletic director and athletic trainer, and then stipends for those athletic and co-curricular activities, and then paying officials, graduation, so that's what that covers.
Yes, sir.
Right, so as part of the teacher's contract, there's an appendix around stipends, and so we're anticipating that that's coming forward to the board. There's not a lot, but there may be a few. So, you know, don't want to put no new positions where they may add a few stipends. Like another club, things that have come, like an art club at the Auburn Middle School. Things that teachers have asked to, and students have wanted, so yes. Yep.
Any other questions or discussion on other instruction? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 5, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for student and staff support. School board recommends $2,610,594.21. Motion, please.
So moved.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion?
So I can do a quick.
Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I thought that might be your question. So student and staff support, so we've done in the classroom, we have the special education, then we have our co-curricular and athletic, and then this is all the supports for students outside of those programming. So this is covering our guidance counselors, social workers, nurses, librarians, our technology department. It has our director of technology position. It does our supplies and equipment in those areas, software and hardware. It also covers improvement of instruction office that the assistant superintendent oversees as well. And it has course reimbursement for professional development. And we did restructure the technology department to have a 0.5 administrative assistant position support that department.
Does that answer your question, sir? Any other questions on student and staff support? Yes.
Yeah, you have up here supplies and equipment.
Yes.
Whereas you specifically stated That was in the general education fund of the 7 million. All that equipment that's in the schools rooms was included in that fund, but you have it doubled up over here too. And then you have another, career and technical education, which would be all those other classes you just mentioned that this would include. It sounds like, I don't know.
So every cost center, you'll see supplies, okay? So whatever went for the regular instruction for the classroom, there's supplies for the teachers, then there's supplies for the special education, then there's supplies to run the co-curricular and athletics, and then there's supplies for the libraries, the nurses, the social workers, guidance, so when they need for supplies for their programming. So you'll see that.
Another article for supplies, but all those supplies are in those other articles. There's always supplies, but then we have another article for supplies on top of all the other supplies.
Every cost center has a supply line.
Any other questions on student and staff support? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 6, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for system administration. School board recommends $866,302.32. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
What system? Which system? Name the system.
Okay. So yes, I'll overview this one as well. So remember, all these cost centers are Maine Department of Education cost centers. So all the funding, all those codes, when you ask like supplies, those are all organized for us in our accounting system. So system administration covers really the central office positions of the superintendent, the administrative assistant to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, business manager, our payroll benefits clerk, our accounts payable receivable clerk, and then it also has purchase services, legal fees, supplies again for central office, postage, something when we send this out. For postage, we have the board of director stipends, which is not very much, $25 per person per meeting. So it covers anything that happens connected to those positions is system administration.
Any other questions or discussion?
Laura from Sabatis. Katie, do you mind just explaining why a district of our size needs a superintendent and assistant superintendent when we didn't have that position previously?
Yes, that's a good question. I've been asked that before. So some districts have a superintendent and a curriculum director, and some have a superintendent and assistant superintendent. So when you have an assistant superintendent, that person can take over if, God forbid, something were to happen to me. They have authority to step right in. The assistant superintendent position does do the curriculum director position, also does the nutrition director overseeing. We do not have a nutrition director. She oversees that with partnership with our Lisbon folks that help us as well. She also does assessment. She oversees the coaches. She oversees the Title I program. She helps with the principals and supporting them in their buildings and staff. So she does a potpourri of things in her role. So if she's not titled assistant superintendent, she'd be titled curriculum director and all other assignments by the superintendent.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Any further questions on system administration? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 7, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for school administration. School Board recommends $1,049,350.51. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved
So
and
I'll
seconded.
Yeah. And
Any discussion?
You want me to do an overview?
Go ahead.
Here's the overview. So this is school administration. These are the positions of our principals. We have 4 principals, 2 assistant principals, and 5 school secretaries that support the principal. You'll see supplies and equipment for the principal's office, postage, travel, professional memberships, and we did a restructuring to, instead of an Oak Hill Middle School Sabatis primary assistant principal position, we will have a Sabatis principal position. So no new positions, we did restructuring. As you'll hear all along restructuring, we were committed to taking what we have and looking at it perhaps differently to meet the needs in order not to raise.
Any questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
As mentioned prior to this, again, and I know you tried to explain it, okay? I see supplies and equipment for offices. Why couldn't that be one number?
Because we have to track every cost center. So when we approve this budget, we give it to the Maine Department of Education, and so they expect things to go in according to those cost centers. So all the cost centers, so it wouldn't be fair to say all the supplies go to regular instruction when they don't. They cover every program in the different cost centers. It's in accounting. It's here's the principal's office. That's where the school secretaries are. So whatever goes out of that office for supplies, like their envelopes, their pens, all that goes under that cost center. It's just the way we need to do it.
As I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons I'm here is based on rumors.
Right.
And one of the rumors is that some of the teachers bring their own supplies. Is this true or false?
Yes, I would say they do. What we're committed to is we put out there, please tell us what you need to do your job. So we do best to meet that, and then teachers who want additional things in their classroom or to do different things that we may not have, they do purchase their own supplies.
So again, I'm gonna ask the question, and I realize what you said, I'm not stupid. But if the supplies is an operating expense, again, why can't it be one budget for supplies? And has it ever been audited?
Yes, we're audited every year
By?
by RKO, is our audit firm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding school administration? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 8, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for transportation and buses. School Board recommends $1,134,357.02. Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
I've noticed that we were using these large buses during the summer to deliver food to some of the families. There's an economical way to deliver the food. We do not need to use these great big buses running on the roads 2 or 3 times a day when they could very well have some other way of transportation.
Kathy, it seems she wants to, Kathy Perry is our head bus driver, whose position is in this cost center. So she's the most knowledgeable, probably.
The question you asked, we only delivered food during the COVID when they were doing the
Emergency.
Thank you, remote learning. I had a brain cramp. We haven't done that since 2020, right? 2021. The only thing the buses are running for in the summer now is for summer school, and it's only for 10 days 15 days, and that's 2 weeks in the June and 2 weeks in July, and 2 weeks in August. That's it. Other than that, we're not transporting food, just children.
Is there a follow-up?
I would ask, how many children does that involve?
Oh, you mean summer school? How many, Kathy, how many students are attending summer school?
For this upcoming year, we are slating in pre-K4, we're going to be servicing about 28% of our students. The high school, it changes, just it's credit recovery, so it's kind of fluid. We won't know what our percentage is, but we average between 29 to about 35% of our students during summer.
That doesn't answer my question. I mean, a figure, how many students, not percentage. You could have 5 students and it's 29% of that.
So I currently have about 135 students in pre-K4, and then our percentage will vary at the middle and high school. But we have reduced where they're going. So our pre-K4 is getting transported to Carey Ricker, and 5 through 12 is going to the high school. So we reduce how many schools they're going to be going to for summer school.
Laura.
In this transportation budget here, how many buses do we have?
20 buses.
20 buses. And how many of those buses run every day for regular runs? 11. So we have 9 buses that don't run. And then how many bus drivers do we have?
So in this budget is 13 bus driver positions.
For 11 buses. And then the last question is, how many of those bus drivers take their buses to and from their residence? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm just curious. It seems like 20 plus years ago, when I went to summer school, we were required to provide our own transportation. Why is that changed? Like, is it required from the state that we do that, or is that just a service that we're offering?
It's about equity around making sure all students can participate in the program. So parents still do transport their own, and then there are parents that sign up for transportation.
But is it a state requirement, or is it something we're providing as a individual service?
It's not a state requirement.
We are using ARP funds to
Right.
fund the entire summer school program. So the cost center that you see up here for transportation, it does not include summer school. So I
Right.
was answering the gentleman's question regarding our numbers of summer school and why you see buses on the road during summer. You need to understand that our summer school program is $0 to the taxpayers. We are completely using our COVID ARP funds as part of the requirements to provide programs and services for students in light of COVID and trying to reduce that risk and increase our percentages in our academic achievement going forward. So in this cost center, it is 0 regarding summer school.
Yeah.
Currently. When those funds run out, that's a different story.
Correct. Well, you're right. You're going to see summer school in the budget for next year.
Okay. Laura?
Kathy, can you just clarify the 0 cost? Where did those ARP funds come from? Are those funded from taxpayers as well?
This is the federal dollars that flowed to the state.
From whose pockets? Right. Well, so it's not 0, right? Like taxpayers funded that as well.
All right.
Well,
I'm going to draw that back in.
Right.
I think the point was that it was 0 in out of this budget, and I'm just going to draw that back in. Okay. Any further questions on transportation and buses? Mr. Waterman.
What was the reason it went down? Was that from the federal money buying some new buses for us? And part 2 is, what is the general condition of the fleet? Are we looking at needing more buses next year, or what is the general condition of the fleet?
Sure. So we've actually been using the Sabatis Public Works Garage and their mechanics to now do all of our bus maintenance. I would say, and Kathy would, I'm sure, agree that our bus fleet is at its healthiest currently by having those mechanics right on site where we park the buses. We only have one bus that for age would qualify for state subsidy replacement through the program next year. However, the mileage requirements are not there for us. So we don't have any other buses in our fleet that would require would meet state subsidy requirements. So if we did want to buy some more buses, we would have to just pay for it out of budget.
So the reduction in this article is there was a lease payment for buses in the budget, and we're not having that ride. So it's not staying in there as a place marker. It was taken out.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
As much as I'm in favor of seeing the savings on here, I think it's great to see that. It brings up an interesting point when you talk about the replacement of the fleet. Are you provisioning anywhere in here to build ahead to have a reserve so that when the time comes, and I'm not sure what the timeline is, if it's 2 years, 3 years, that your mileage expires or something expires, presumably it sounds like there's a discrepancy or a shortage from what the state will subsidize and what the taxpayers are expected to pay for a new bus when the time comes. Are you provisioning ahead for that within this? Or is this going to be a big surprise in 2 years where all of a sudden here's a $200,000 bill that the taxpayers need to cough up for a new bus because the current bus is aged out?
You want me to answer that? So we don't have a reserve account. So no, we don't plan for savings in the budget. You're correct that what's great is the state has a reimbursement, so there would be funds that we would have to expend in order to be reimbursed. So we did not keep that in the budget.
A little off topic, and I acknowledge that before I make a comment, but I'm a little concerned about a 29 to 35% of the student population needs summer school. Is that raising any red flags among anybody else? I'm sorry, it just doesn't make sense to me. When I was in school, if there were 5 kids that needed summer school, somebody was on top of that.
In the back first.
So I have a question about what's happening with all the extra buses. Are we looking at selling those to try to reduce our budget, or are we just kind of holding on to them and?
I'll speak to that. So we hold on to a lot of them. We have a lot of regular maintenance that needs to be done on the buses that are driven regularly. So for instance, dry services, wet services, brake jobs, things like that. So it's important to have spare buses. And I understand that it currently looks like we have double the fleet, and it seems excessive. I think, Robbie, you've commented in board meeting past that putting those buses out to bid wasn't fiscally responsible. We didn't get the dollar value we were looking for. It's honestly probably more valuable being on site and used as a spare, God forbid something happened to a bus that we currently use. And I think you also find in years previous, the number of bus drivers that we had on staff were much higher, so that didn't look like we had so many spares. And in recent years, due to retirement or job change, the number of bus drivers that we currently have on staff has gone down, thus showing that we have an extra few buses in the fleet.
So I understand that, but we're looking at almost a $1.2 million increase that taxpayers are going to be funding. And if you could look at reducing that by selling some buses, maybe that is a great way to help reduce this burden on taxpayers.
The only comment I'll make to that too, though, is that if we hold on to some of the buses that meet the state reimbursement mileage and year requirements, then we're actually benefiting our taxpayer dollars by using the state to help us fund a new bus. For instance, we have a 2016 bus that isn't quite at the 10-year mark, but it is exceeded the 125,000 miles required by the state to be subsidized for replacement. So if we hold on to that bus for a couple more years, we're actually getting a lot more value out of holding on to it and using it as a trade-in for state subsidy for a brand new bus.
That bus more often?
I'm sorry, say again?
Are you using that bus more often in order to get there?
we're there on the mileage already, so using it more often right now actually wouldn't help us. We're just strictly waiting on 2026 because it's a 10-year requirement by the state.
All right, Mr. English.
You had a good question about reserve, so we come. Historically, we were eligible typically to renew 2 buses through state subsidy each year, and that's what we would do. We finally got to the point where our fleet was new enough, with low enough miles, that we're not eligible for that subsidy again. So, like, we have 1 in 2 years. After that, we probably have 2 the next year, and 2 the year after that we'll be able to to use to get the subsidy. If we were to sell them, I'm not sure what a bid price would be. I know in the past they are probably under $1,000 bid for a school bus. All right. Yeah.
70,000.
Yeah. So if we hold on to them, then we get the state subsidy and we pay pennies on the dollar for the new bus. So it's penny wise, pound foolish in some ways to go and try and deplete that number now. Hopefully we could get a couple more bus drivers so we get a few more buses on the road and travel times wouldn't be as long as they are.
Any further questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
Presently, if I understand correctly, the buses are being serviced by the Public Works Department. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
What, Sabatis, Wales, Litchfield?
Sabatis.
Sabatis. Okay. What happens if the mechanic quits? Do you have a plan B?
Well, we have other mechanics.
Go ahead.
We have other mechanics that we use, like there's one in Litchfield, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, we have one right in Litchfield, Ron Marston.
Yeah. And so we'd have to either hope that the town hires a new mechanic or send it out to dealership, which is usually more expensive. But the buses have to be inspected 2 times a year. And, you know, there's general maintenance on them as we go. Brakes, you know, oil changes, stuff like that.
Anybody that owns a car knows that. But my question is, what is the plan? Is Plan B more expensive than Plan A?
We don't know yet because we haven't heard from the town of Sabatis what their plan is about hiring a new mechanic.
So in the meantime, we don't service the buses?
No, sir.
We will service buses, but we'll have to send
Rob,
them to another
Rob,
mechanic.
I'm going to draw the conversation back. The question was asked, the question was answered. Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Desjardins.
Glenn, if you could, how you doing, sir? I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Also, when you look at the number of, when they call them extra buses, I'd like to have you just cover how many trips or how many runs, bus runs on a daily basis you have for all our schools, for our school district, but also extracurricular activities, sporting events, where our kids need to go out of town, you know, for football, baseball, whatever. I know I do a few of those trips, but those buses, if you didn't have those spare buses, how would you respond to be able to transport our kids? And I know at some point, some weekends, and during the week, you probably have 3 or 4 trips that are going out of town. And that's what those buses are for. Could you go over that just a little bit so the folks will understand how many buses you really need or use?
Sure. So yes, we do have all of the bus drivers that we have currently staffed are doing at a very minimum a morning and an afternoon run for the middle school and high school kids, and then again a morning and an afternoon run for our littles. We also have 4 bus drivers doing a midday pre-K run. We have another driver doing an adult ed run. We have another driver doing an LRTC run. And then depending on the day, depending on the student need, we'll have upwards of 3 drivers doing a late bus run for after-school activities. It mixed into all that, as Guy just mentioned, we have after-school sporting events. We have field trips throughout the day. We have weekend trips, all things that put a lot of miles on the buses. So consequently, maintenance becomes, it comes quicker. So we need to have those, extra buses. So for instance, if I have a driver who has just put on 15,000 miles and it's time for a 15 to 20,000 mile brake job, they have the ability to grab another bus that is ready to go in our yard and keep those kids going to school, to go into sporting programs, field trips, etc.
Any other questions or discussion?
I don't need that. I just want to be clear on the point that you're busing adult ed participants.
There's a question about busing adult education.
Excuse me, for the record, not adult education, alternative education. I apologize. Alternative education.
Okay. That's more of a question for...
Alternative education is a pathway we have for high school students. Adult education happens after the school day. So alternative is our high school students.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Fall under this, or does it fall under the extracurricular budget that we voted on in a previous article?
It falls under this.
Okay.
To let you know, as a parent, I'm being asked more and more to drive my kids to their athletic events and their after school events. Take time out of my day, and my income, to give my kids a chance to have those regular activities. Thank you. Move to vote.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Recapping, the motion was for $1,134,357.02. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 9, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for facilities maintenance. School Board recommends $3,538,434.34. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion?
What facilities are we going to be working on? What are they, what's the programs to come up with this figure?
Can you talk about this cost center?
Yeah. I can do an overview, and then, John, if you want to chime in.
Sure.
So this cost center covers our custodial staff, which we have 3 head custodians and 15 custodians. We have purchase service in here for our plowing needs and our annual inspections, supplies and equipment for all of our custodial staff. We have our Siemens performance contract payments. We have heating, oil, liquid propane, and electricity costs, and there are no new positions. Jonathan, do you want to talk more in depth about the projects for repairs?
Sure. So specifically, sir, you're asking about what projects we might be looking to do, or what this budget kind of covers as far as day-to-day?
We turned down the opportunity to build a school because at the time our maintenance of some of the buildings were very high. What are we doing about the maintenance on those buildings? Is this part of those maintenance problems at those buildings?
Yes and no. Yes. So some of the day-to-day things that need to be either replaced or repaired, specifically windows not opening and closing, as that directly relates to fire marshal code of point of egress or security of the building. Things like that are getting addressed. That are certainly concerns about the schools that are a little bit older in our district. However, some of the schools that need substantial, if not complete, roofing repairs, that is not part of this budget because it just can't be fit into, for the amount that it costs to do an entire roof, it can't fit into a single budget year. We've also, part of this budget too, like Katie pointed out, is heating oil, propane, electricity. We have had some spikes in utility costs, so that does account for a lot of those. And then what makes my job so fun is the day-to-day repairs that come up unexpected, right? So inherently in a repair and maintenance or a facilities and maintenance budget, you have unexpected repairs. So you have to have some money in there accounting for something that you're not expecting to have happen. And that can be something as small as $5 to repair or replace. That could be as much as $5,000. So I have to have some money in there that I can take care of something on the fly.
Yes, sir.
To that point, generally speaking, what represents the majority of that increase from a percentage standpoint? I mean, we talk about salaries, 3 to 5% probably isn't uncommon if you look at annual merit increases and whatnot, but what drives that to the 13%? Is it fuel? Is it propane? Is it electricity? Where are you seeing what carries the weight of that?
So, I mean, just generally, inflation costs, a lot of this budget, I have to use outside vendors. So their costs are going up. I have to accommodate for that or match that so I can still have these vendors take care of our schools. Electricity went up substantially. I think 137%, which is astronomical. And we secured it before it went up even higher. So electricity was a big driver. Heating oil had gone up substantially. And honestly, the cost of getting something fixed or replaced. I see that when I try and fix or replace something at my own house. Contractors' labor wages and parts and materials are going up, so I have to account for that accordingly. But yes, to answer your question, a big driver was utility costs.
Yes, ma'am.
Open the door for me. So you're saying a lot of these costs are driven by extra heating oil costs, extra electric costs, extra fuel costs, all of that. So when you raise the property taxes for a lot of the elderly that don't have children in this school district, for a lot of families that are living paycheck to paycheck, and for a lot of families that are living on subsidized housing or main care, whatever. When those families are now at hardship because their taxes have gone up and they're being kicked out of their homes or kicked out of their rental properties, my question to you, Mr. English, how do we get our kids educated now when they're homeless?
If you have a question to the body, address the question
Sorry.
to me, not to individuals.
Sorry.
You may continue.
So my question is to whoever it needs to be. When we increase these costs, how do we continue getting these kids educated when you're saying you can't survive without the increase in this budget? How do we as families survive with this kind of increase?
Is anybody? Mr. English.
You bring up a good point. And every increase out there in cost, whether it's for groceries, fuel oil, impacts everybody. And we have a number of residents in our towns that are strapped and are struggling to make ends meet. I realize that. In saying that, our sworn oath that we take as a school board member is basically to provide, I've been quoted as saying many times, the best education we can that the taxpayers can afford. And we look at this budget really hard when we build it and try and keep it as bare bone and as the minimum increase as possible. We don't want to put an additional stress on anybody out there in the community, but we have a sworn obligation to provide education. So that means we have to heat the buildings. We have to have the lights on. We got to transport. We got to buy that fuel. There's things that we have to do. We have to have the teachers. All of our staff have contractual agreements, all right, that we're obligated to go and pay them. And those costs are there. And, you know, we would like to be able to say that we're not causing any additional undue hardship. we're somewhat fortunate for people of my age that have been in my home for more than 10 years that there is some relief for us, at least this year and maybe next year, in that our property taxes are capped. All right? How much longer that will be around, we don't know. But for this year, my property taxes won't go up because of that. You know, I'm sure that the state's not going to continue to do that in the long run. So, you know, we are torn, and we have this discussion. We have this discussion when we build a budget. We have this discussion whenever we enter negotiations. How much can we afford to pay and provide so that we can afford to keep the staff and we can afford not to overtax the taxpayers? It's a balancing act. You know, how do we provide the education? I guess, you know, there's a certain number of dollars that we have to have in order to provide the education, and we try not to ask for any more than that.
All right, thank you, Mr. English. Questions?
Wait, though, that didn't answer my question. How, when these kids do become homeless or have to move or whatever, how are we going to supply them with the education that these taxpayers promised?
If I may?
Real brief.
It would rely on unfortunately, the truthful answer is short, nobody wants to hear it, but it would fall back on those of us who have enough that we can afford to pay the taxes that would be necessary. So if somebody doesn't have a dime, they can't get a dime, right? So, I mean, that's the way it is, and we hope the economy grows so people will have the funds.
All right, just reminding people we are on facilities maintenance. Question?
So specific to that, this one is probably one of the more uncomfortable ones because it's from a percentage standpoint, it's pretty large. I hear you loud and clear with regards to the increase in expenses. We're all suffering from the same, whether it's personal, you know, in our homes, in our businesses, in our own lines of work. Specific to this, though, aside from what we're seeing from the percentage increases, is the board or the school, the district in and of itself, undergoing any active initiatives from a cost reduction standpoint on how to do this? With regards to external performance contracts, is that being audited, or is that a bid process that happens annually with Siemens or others? Are we actively looking at just to make an example, you know, when people are suffering at home, they're going to turn the thermostat down 2 degrees. I'm not saying you're going to freeze the kids out in the classroom. Don't misinterpret that. But are there active initiatives that we're looking at to say, you know, okay, whether it's an energy saving initiative, whether it's, you know, some of the clean air initiatives that, you know, may cost something up front that provide long-term benefits, you know, the contracts, all these other things that go along with that. What is being done actively? Is there a roster for that to actively address cost savings initiatives, specifically to things like that that really cap? I mean, the same could be said for any of these categories, quite frankly, but specifically to that, are we taking any action to that? Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, our maintenance projects that we've signed on to with Siemens are energy savings projects, and that's been a big driver for us over the last, what, Jonathan, 7 years, I think, 8 years?
Yeah, 7, 8 years.
So changing from, you know, fuel oil to propane, getting more efficient systems, better lighting, you know, LED lighting and stuff like that. That's been an ongoing project for us in the district for the last 7 years. So consequently, yeah, I mean, those numbers have, you know, lowered the cost of this cost center. So yes, we're continually looking at being more efficient and getting better equipment, you know, with, you know, better, like this building right here, this part of the building right here has a brand new air handler, which is more efficient, costs less energy, and, you know, gives us a better air quality. So yeah, those projects continue all the time.
Any further questions regarding facilities and maintenance? In the back.
Again, I'm Doug from Litchfield. I should mention I have 3 children. I have 4 children total, 3 in 3 different schools in the school system. As far as facilities and maintenance, I feel like it's important to also note that I remember, if any other parents that have children at the Oak Hill Middle School, the TikTok Destroy the Bathroom challenge that maybe happened earlier in the year. Just to account for some of these costs, these are also the kids of the parents that are sending their kids to school. These are self-incurred costs that they also have to deal with that don't get brought up. I mean, the school tries to put on a very presentable face and not always air all the dirty laundry to us all the time to try to, because they don't want us to look down on them, you know. I think this is an important thing to note, that they're trying their best to look the best, you know, with all that.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? All right, just recapping facilities and maintenance, the motion on the floor is for $3,538,434.34. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 10, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for debt service and other commitments. School board recommends $453,429.77. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Yep, so debt service, this is paying for, as you can see here, the new high school construction on Oak Hill Middle School, and it's the principal and interest payments for that project. And we see that we have to put it as an expenditure, even though the state, it runs through our ED 279 as well, that amount. So we have to note it as an expenditure.
Katie, point of information.
Yes.
This is not a new project that we're funding.
No, this is not a new
old
project.
debt from when
Yes.
the middle school was built.
Yes.
In what year?
2010, did we yeah.
2007.
2007.
2007.
Thank you.
For that, it's not new.
So you've seen this every year since then.
Any other questions or discussion? Yes.
Right. 4 years left. But as you can see, it went down 18,000. So there's a positive. Gotta look at the positive.
Any other questions or discussion on debt and other commitments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 11, to see what sum the RSU will be authorized to expend for all other expenditures. School board recommends $0. Motion, please. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. Questions or discussion?
So I'll explain this one. This had been running as a general fund. That's what we call these articles, general fund. And it does not, the food nutrition program is not in the general fund. It works outside of it. And so it is recommended by the Maine Department of Education that it get moved, and you will see it as Article 15. School nutrition program, and we'll talk about that more. So it's been moved, and it no longer will be in the general fund, and that's why it's no longer under Article 11.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 12. To see what sum the RSU will appropriate for the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, and to see what sum the RSU will raise and assess as each municipality's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act in accordance with Maine Revised Statutes, Title 20A, Section 15688. Recommended amounts to be set forth. Total apportioned by Litchfield is $5,530,237.47, and that amount to be raised by Litchfield is $2,754,776.33. Appropriated for the town of Sabattis is $8,624,305.84. Total raised by the town of Sabattis is $2,345,200. $288.83. Total appropriated for the town of Wales is $2,896,237.82. The total raised by Wales is $912,489.17. Total appropriated sum of $17,050,781.13. And the amount to be raised, $6,012,554.33. Motion, please. It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. Questions or discussion?
Hey, good evening. My name is Tom Wood. I'm the current chairman of the Litchfield Budget Committee. And the Budget Committee met at its regular meeting on May 17th and has instructed me to deliver this message to you. There are three findings of import. One is that the current budget as proposed is a 12.5% increase over last year to be raised by Litchfield. And we feel that this is excessive and 5% is more in line with reality. Number two has to do with this specific article. The formula used by RSU4 to apportion the additional local costs results in Litchfield supporting 42.7% of the total cost, while only representing 32.6% of the students served. This results in the cost per student for Litchfield of $11,109 a student a year. Cost per student for Sabattis is $7,389, for Wales, $7,823. Litchfield's costs are fully 50% higher per student than the other towns. The committee requests that RSU4 reconsider changing the formula in order to bring more equity and align the cost per student across the three towns.
Thank you.
Yeah, Randy, like this came up last year about the funding formula. The Finance Committee looked at it, came up with a recommendation, and the board voted to keep the funding formula as is. Huh? The vote was in public by the school board. It's not the public's vote, it's
All
the
right.
school board vote.
All right.
Yeah.
Laura?
With Article 2, with the amount changing, does that change this bottom amount?
So let me be clear on this article. This article is to get the state subsidy. Article 13 is the additional local. So these numbers are determined by the Maine Department of Education. So on our ED 279 formulas, it calculates the total amount, and then it calculates per town what the towns, based on the state mill rate, can pay for education as part of that model to receive the $11,038,226.80 from the state. So these amounts cannot be changed if you want to receive the $11 million from the state.
In the back.
So Mr. Wood has a really good point that he brought up, and I wasn't there for that. Why did the school board vote to keep it the same from last year?
I'm going to rein that conversation in just a little bit, because that is something that would occur at a board meeting, not at the general budget meeting of the RSU. But I think the point's been raised. It's a valid point. I think the board has responded, but I don't think that discussion, because it could be very lengthy, is part of tonight's process.
Is there a quick 1 to 2 sentence answer as to why that was like a?
Look for the minutes.
Yeah, they looked at several formulas, and this one is the one that remained.
All right.
Is there something I can reference online to find are there previous videos of these meetings that I can look at? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Desjardins.
What draws the formula, or what makes this formula work for each municipality, and please tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm misunderstanding, it involves the town evaluation as well as the mill rate. So if a community's evaluation goes up and the mill rate increases on their general expenses, or the municipal budget, that changes the amount of each municipality.
That is not correct.
Okay, that's how I understood it, that especially when you mentioned, someone mentioned mill rate.
Sharon could answer. Yeah, so.
Marco, can you bring that to Sharon for a second?
Of course. This is a state fund. Just remember, in this article, it's not the 50-50 formula.
No.
Just want to be clear on that.
That's right.
Okay.
The state ED 279 is proportioned based on they allot how much money they believe you need based on student population. How much they want you to raise is based on state valuation, which is very different than town valuation. And then the state sets the mill rate expectation that they expect the towns to raise to get the state funding. No, they set an education expectation mill rate that is set at the state level.
So I'll tell you, the 3-year average for Litchfield was $395,233,333. Sabattis was $336,483,033. Wales was $130,916,667. The mill rate set by the state was $6.97. So they multiply those to give what you're being asked to for your local. Yeah, it's all calculated in the formula.
Right. It's not an expectation of what Sabattis has for a mill rate. It's the expectation of the state saying you have to raise this many mills to get that amount of money.
Correct. Yeah. It's a complicated formula.
It's a very complicated
Yes.
formula. And I actually, Sharon from Wales was my unpaid assistant doing some research on the ED 279 prior to them coming out. So, any other questions? Everyone's pointing at somebody, but I don't see
I
anyone.
know, well, he raised it and then he brought it down.
Guys, the mill rate that the state pays the school districts has nothing to do with the Sabattis, Wales, and Litchfield individual town tax mill rates.
Right.
They set their mill rate, and the word mill is just in common, but they're two completely different mill rates. The state formula, the way I understand it, is to address the citizens of Litchfield, wants them to pay more, this is at the state level, because the town valuation is more, and they weigh that more heavily, let's say, than the student population. That can be a source of aggravation for residents in a town that the state is telling them they have to pay more money. Then when you get to the district, we have historically had our own formula to try to be fair to all 3 towns. And it is my understanding that this past year, the district had an opportunity to adopt the more stringent one that does not favor Litchfield. And the school board, and I can stand corrected if that has to happen that way, But the school board voted to favor Litchfield and not adopt as a kind gesture because of the situation was starting to get out of hand, say, at the state level. So it's my understanding that the school board did keep the local mill rate that they charge out of the formula, which is some student population and some mill rate, the same way, which didn't adopt the more strict one that was at the state level that would have hurt Litchfield more.
I was going to say you were like a 7-year-old, but if you want to go 5, that's fine.
Yes.
Yes.
Dave Larry, Litchfield. Can you tell me the breakdown of the board? How many board members are Sabattis? How many board members from Wales? How many board members from Litchfield?
Yeah, it's 4 from Sabattis, 3 from Litchfield, and 2 from Wales.
Okay, but Litchfield pays more money than Sabattis, and we have less representation. You know, I was at a meeting about 10 years ago with the school board when they talked about trying to make it more equitable, and all they do is kick the can down the road for another year because they pass a budget and they go on again and again and again, and Litchfield pays the brunt of it. Sabattis has a full-time police officer, maybe more than one. They have a couple, I believe, full-time firemen, maybe more than one. And Litchfield doesn't have any of that because we're indirectly paying for those positions because we pay the brunt of their school budget.
All right. I'm trying. I'm going to just remind you that this discussion is not part of budget process for this evening. We need to get through the budget process. Okay? Any other discussion on Article 12, which is the raising of the funds for the budget? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your paddles. Those opposed? The motion carries. Article 13, I will remind everybody, is a written ballot to see what sum the RSU will raise and appropriate in additional local funds. Recommend $4,665,383.69, which exceeds the state essential programs and services allocation model by $4,665,383.69 as required to fund the budget recommended by the school board. The school board recommends $4,665,383.69, which exceeds the state's essential programs and services allocation model by $4,665,383.69 due to inequities in the EPS funding formula, including but not limited to the regional labor market adjustment factor, student-teacher ratios, extra and co-curricular programs, and administrative costs. Motion, please. It's been moved,
I'm not moving it.
and it's been seconded.
That's not what I was going to move the amount.
You can make an amendment.
I would like to amend the motion to subtract the 70,000 that was reduced from the special education line, which I think then makes the number, check my math please, $4,595,383.69. That's the correct number?
Yes.
So that's my amendment.
Did you say 4,595,383 and 60 cents?
I did.
69 cents.
69.
Is there a second? Second. It has been seconded. Any discussion? I'm going to remind you that this is an amendment, so we will be voting twice, unless the original motioner wanted to withdraw the motion.
I can withdraw my original motion.
And the seconder has withdrawn. Okay. So that amount becomes a main motion, Mr. English. Any discussion? Yes.
I move an amendment to reduce the amount to $4,180,878.76. That number will keep Litchfield's contribution through the apportionment to 5% over last year.
Can you repeat that number one more time?
$4,180,478.76.
Is there a second? It has been seconded. Any discussion?
Katie, is there anything that you could think of that we will lose out of this budget with that number?
Well, I'm doing the subtraction right now. There's a 400. 500,000. I mean, obviously, cutting 500,000, we're going to have to look deep and look at all the programs and look at all the reductions to say where that is going to be. We were not aware of this until moments before the meeting started. So to be fair, it's not fair for me to say anything. You know, having that reduction is going to put staff on edge. They already were coming into the budget. So to say that there's a plan for the 500,000 would not be fair.
Mr. Parker.
Just a comment, I agree that the state fund formula can't be changed. In order to get the state funds, we have to agree to the increase in all of the state funds. This is where you can make a little bit more, make a difference. This fund, pay anything you want.
Additional local is.
The 50/50.
Right. I'll just remind you that the additional local portion, which is this article, is 50% valuation
50% student population.
and 50% student population. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page with that, right? Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm a little confused because we've agreed on figures for the 11 articles. So if we change the total here, where are you going to cut? Are you going to cut it in regular education, special education, facilities? Who's going to decide where are you going to cut?
All right. Hold on.
It would go
Hold,
back
hold
to
on,
the
hold on just a moment,
administrators.
please. Just a moment, please. So the 70,000 was reduced out of a cost center of special education. And then there's an additional $414,904.90. The board would have to decide which cost center would come from. Do you have anything to add?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. Mr. English.
Yeah, I would like to speak in opposition to this amendment. I understand there's a lot of, and we're going to discuss this at board meetings, I'm sure, with the funding formula, but the funding formula we have is what's going through this budget. Any change would be in future budgets. So somebody that wants to cut an additional $400,000 from the school budget, our ability to go and spend, I would hope that they did enough homework to go and provide the board with a detailed list of just exactly what items they would like us to go and cut or to consider. If you leave it up to us, personally, I can't see taking it out of regular education. I can't see it out of special ed. We got $0 in career. Student staff support, systematic school administration, transportation. That kind of leaves, you know, facilities maintenance and, you know, the other instruction. You know, so, I mean, we're going to have to consider that. If this were to pass it, between now and the referendum, the board's going to have to come up with where this money would come from, where we wouldn't spend it, so that everybody that goes to the referendum in June would know what's going to be missing out of what our current plan is for the school year next year. So,
The gentleman in the back.
In the case of any budget, the board in charge with establishing the budget would be the budget organization to adjust when there is a cut made to one of their proposals. It is the job of the school board to look carefully at their budget and say, the taxpayers have said, we would like to reduce the amount that you're proposing and make sure that you can find a way to make the best decisions on what you're going to cut. It isn't our job to sit here and listen to you talk about what you would cut. That's up to you. But what you cut can be done in such a way, I'm quite sure, so that the school system will function. It may not be as plentifully supplied as it was, but it will function. The children will be educated. No teachers are going to lose their job as far as we're concerned, because if you look at that budget, there's enough in it, I'm quite sure, for you to make the proper adjustments and survive.
In the very back.
So everybody's bringing up a lot of very good points. Can I put forth a motion, instead of it being 50-50 mil, we keep the same budget, but change it to 40-60, where it's 40? I can't do that at this moment, where we recalculate the mill rate so that it's 40% on the state mandated and 60% on the student population. That's not, because that seems to be the big issue with a lot of this, is trying.
That would not be available at this budget meeting. It is a decision that the board has to make on how the additional local is funded.
that's only partly true.
Okay.
The Budget Committee recommends a new funding formula, if so, to the board. If the board wants to support that new funding formula, then it goes out to referendum.
Right.
Just as the 50-50 went to all three towns, and all three towns passed that when we formed the RSU. So that was already an agreed upon amount back 10, 12 years ago when we formed the RSU. And I attended every public meeting in all three towns to go and to address what was in that RPC, reorganization plan, and it was 50-50. And that's the way it's been. So if we want to change it, because it was approved by the voters initially, it would have to be approved again. It's up to the board by statute to recommend a change. So if the board doesn't want to recommend a change, we review it every 3 years. They don't want to recommend a change, it doesn't go out. If we do, it goes out to the voters to approve. So it would be put in the hands of the voters at that time. We just did our review a year ago, so it's theoretically 2 years before it's required to be reviewed again.
So we may have to just accept this for this year and be more proactive next year to try to ratify some sort of improvement for 2 years, potentially 2 years. I'm just saying that there are ways that we can try to modify this going forward.
There is.
Just to.
All right.
So just for some history, when we looked at the funding formulas, a 20% change either way in student population or town evaluation is about a $200,000 hit for Sabattis or Litchfield. If we go 60-40 evaluation, Litchfield takes a $200,000 hit in increase. If we go with 20% the other way, 60-40% population, Sabattis takes a $200,000 hit either way. That's why we came up with the 50-50 formula, is probably as fair as we can get it. So that's just a history of where we are and how we've got there. So I don't know of any Sabattis taxpayers out there that would want to pay another $200,000 in addition to the funding formula, or Litchfield taxpayers that would want to pay another $200,000 in evaluation, because the evaluation is 60-40. So that's how we got there.
All right, I'm going to remind everybody, the formula is not going to be changed at this meeting, nor can it be changed at this meeting. So I just want to remind people of that.
No, here, take it.
I just want to bring us back to the point of a $500,000 roughly cut. Somebody asked whether or not teachers would be cut in that budget and said, I don't think they would be. So this process for us has been going on since March. We have gone over every single cost center with a fine-tooth comb and really asked a lot of questions, and there were no new positions put into this budget. So in order to be able to meet a $500,000 cut, the highest cost of our budget is personnel. So if a budget cut such as that passes, you will see changes in the classroom, changes to instruction, our class sizes, which is something we as a school board and as a district have really taken into consideration. We don't want our kids being in a class of 25 kids. We want smaller class sizes. That's why most of us moved to a rural community. So I just wanted to just reiterate the fact that a $500,000 cut is pretty significant in terms of instruction.
In reference to doing some sort of cut, and not to ditch you guys on how you did your process on the budget, but have you gone out, was it just sitting down and saying this costs this costs that, this costs this, or did you actually go to like CMP and the oil companies and the propane companies and your internet providers and say, let's get a contracted price. We pay you a huge amount of money, let's get a lowered contracted price. I mean, is there any more of that that can be done? Supply companies, technology company, all of it.
We already contract our fuel price for propane and oil. And like Jonathan explained, our electricity rate, we got into a pool that we're paying a lower percentage, but it still went up. How much, Jonathan? 130? 135%, our electricity rate. So yeah, I mean, what is our per gallon cost for propane, Jonathan?
And then 3% over landed costs, meaning when the propane.
Yeah.
Point of order. Right, we're discussing a... Right. Thank you. The point of order is well taken. I will remind people that we are discussing the amended amount, and we're still in discussion.
We got to the point in which we were cutting so much that was so vital to students. So if we want to just take the $500,000 number and just throw it out there, this gentleman here said something about the fact that he's having to transport his students to athletics. You know what? All of athletics would be
Point of
gone.
information not in order.
You want to cut that money, you're going to take away valuable learning opportunities for students. Now, I understand that it hurts the pocketbook, but I'm going to tell you right now, when we had to fight tooth and nail 12, 15, 17, 18 years ago to make sure that our students had what made a holistic educational experience, you are now looking at chipping away very largely at that. And I do not support doing that to all of our kids.
Thank you. A point of information does not supersede a member speaking. Do you have a point of order or a point of information? You may proceed. What is the what? I will, so originally there was a $70,000 reduction. This amount is $414,904.90 as an additional reduction. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to have people consider this is not a cut, it is a reduction. It is intended to facilitate an adjustment. It isn't necessarily cutting any service. It isn't necessarily cutting any important thing that's being done. It is requiring a reassessment of what's in the bottom line.
I was going to say that exact same thing. We're just not adding as much as we'd like. I just want to touch on the other bases, is that Litchfield actually didn't vote for this RSU4 originally. So we were forced into this to begin with.
No. You voted for it.
Litchfield did not, no.
All right. I'm going to say that that's probably not part of the conversation, but it historically can be looked at. Okay. Mr. Parker, did you have your hand up?
Okay.
All right. In the back.
All the way.
Nope.
All the
Nope.
way.
All the way in the back.
To go with what they said, I'm just trying to gather information. To go what they said, if we voted the 430 or 417,000, am I at 417?
414,904.90.
Okay. If we vote to decrease to that much that we're going to contribute, instead of cuts, is there an ability for the board or for the three towns to then supplement or raise that income in other means at all? Or is that truly just a bottom number cut and that amount cannot be replaced? I think that's important for part of the discussion.
It can't be appropriated through taxation.
Could be fundraised or something. Or donated. You could donate it.
Yes, sir.
Can we move it?
The handling of the funds is going to be up to the school board once a decision is made by the voters. My motion will be, my urge is move the question for the reduced amount.
There is a motion to move the previous question, and it is not debatable. Requires a 2/3 majority of those present to end discussion and immediately move to the vote. All those in favor of ending discussion, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. Ballot clerks, what color ballot are we using? We will be using an orange ballot. It is a yes or no question. We are voting first on the amended amount of $4,180,478.76. A yes is for the amended amount. A no is for something different. The ballot box is open. Please get your ballots from your individual clerks behind you, and we will begin voting.
No. Or adult ed. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know what I'm gonna cut, all sports this year.
No.
They gave a little handout of what they plan on, not supposed to. Adult ed is on there. He came up to me, Tom comes up to me and said, "Why don't you take on your name now?" Thank you for a little bit.
It's almost my bedtime.
She's very sick. Oh, yeah. Very, very ill. But Litchfield. But Robbie made, I mean, it was majority rule just like the school board, and the town of Litchfield had a majority no, and then a minority, yes. Did you get it? A lollipop or your dog?
I should have.
Well, you're either gonna have Sabatis voted down, or you're never gonna.
Well, I know how I'm gonna vote to change the funding formula now.
I think we ought to go straight evaluation.
That's right, straight evaluation. It's the best way to go. That's what the state does,
Just
right?
like the state does. We just mirror-
70% of school districts use straight evaluation.
Yeah, we just mirror the state, do it that way, and I'm not gonna ask the school board.
The ballot box is still open. Does anybody need assistance with voting?
He can go back.
Anybody still need to vote?
Yeah.
Seeing none, I will declare the ballot box closed and we'll begin counting.
I see about, what, 5 or 6 staff members? 103 staff members would have made a big difference. Well, we could get rid of AP.
Taking your mom's place?
Yeah, she's like, it's good. No, we have to go to the car.
We got snacks?
I got dog bone. Do you want to go get my purse? Watch for, listen, watch for cars, okay? Thank you. 9:30 getting supper. Nadine just left and she chose to stay. I know. Well, she wants to play with Lily.
Doesn't go to bed, I guess.
Why'd you bound this up? How long do these go for?
This is the longest one we've had in a long time.
Was it the agenda set till 6:30 to 9?
We should have them at like 6. Or 7.
But I think it was, even last year with the big raise in cost, it's still a big difference.
Well, kind of. Well, maybe we'll be over by 10. Maybe.
Think we should send me a text message to where your bike's alive.
Usually I'm trying to wind down right now.
Because it's not winding down. I haven't been to one of these in forever. Last one I went to of these, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. It was bullshit.
No way.
Oh yeah, it was at the middle school, and it was like they were changing it by $1, and you had to go vote, and it was like $5, and then people were raising it, and I was like, we never came to another one.
So somebody finally gave up.
Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the morning we left. We were like, we gotta go to work.
Can I have your attention? I have the results of Article 13. There was a potential total of 74 ballots to be cast. 32 yes, 37 no. The amendment fails. The motion on the floor is $4,595,383.69. Is there any discussion?
I call for the question. We've had enough discussion.
There's a motion to move the previous question, which will end discussion and move to the vote. All those in favor of ending discussion and moving to the vote, please raise your placards. Those opposed? Motion carries. What color will you be using? Green. We'll be voting with a green ballot.
Color of money.
This is for the motion or for the additional local, Article 13, $4,595,383.69. I will declare the ballot box opened and you can begin voting. Please bring your paddle or your card when you get your ballot, please.
No.
No.
Show that you.
It's just show who you are, I guess.
No, don't turn them in here.
Huh, Randy says, oh, I know. That's the only reason why he goes to the town office.
Although I did almost grab one, but I remember that I left in the car. That's why I asked if you didn't go to the agents, because I stuck out the back door. I used my paddle to down by the IA when you walk the road. Because I'm like, I got here.
God, you gotta.
I got this nasty place. I had it for 2 days.
And it goes, sinus infection
It
and
just,
all that.
I was We just thought it was allergies at first, but then it just seems to be.
The little thing.
This room's.
Yeah, it's supposed to. I know. I know that the other day. I was like, I haven't seen that in a while.
Every bus has one.
Yeah, it's like I don't. Well, the newer buses.
I haven't seen a bus without one, so you must be
So
running
it must
newer
be.
buses.
It must be. Maybe it's a new feature that's required. So that you haven't missed the big yellow. Give me the light that gets your attention. Probably for weather. I noticed it the other day too. I thought, oh, I didn't know they ran all the time.
I'm gonna give this to you, because this is part of your minutes. Sharon's gonna give you the balance. You secure
Well,
the
it should
balance.
all be. We're recording this whole thing.
But you are the keeper of
The balance. Okay. I got my little pile of them.
So Sharon will, so that, you'll grab those from Sharon.
Now, if this fails, we'll be back at the beginning. Oh, you want the total if this goes?
The next one.
I had that here. I took the 70, 383. Mm-hmm. 80 and 82, right? Yeah. 82. Hi, how are you?
Good. Just wanted to make a suggestion. I don't know whether it's possible, but the slideshows that you showed,
Yeah.
It would be great if that was included
I
in this.
know. It's so much to do to print it. That's the hard part. I know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I know. That's what makes it hard. But maybe next year I can have it well prepared so you can look
Does
at
anybody need assistance with voting?
Yeah, no, that's good feedback though. Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I had it finalized today, but I'd have to push to get it finalized sooner, which is not a problem. But maybe to have it online so people could see it ahead of me. Now that I've fixed it up. Thank you for the feedback.
I didn't hear anybody jump up.
Has anybody need assistance with voting? Seeing none, I will declare the ballot box closed and will begin counting.
I think between Sabattis and Wales, we got enough to carry
Well, we
the
already
new
did
funding
it. This
formula,
locals one.
100% evaluation.
Last year was only one number.
But Scott wouldn't vote
Somebody
for it,
should have
but-
said to himself, something's, nobody caught it.
Well,
Nobody caught it.
they saw what his tax bill might change.
True.
This much
If it were
discussion.
to go 100 students.
Yeah.
Information. Oh. Whoa. Oh.
We're really talking not much of a difference in any individual person's.
I hope it passes.
No. No. I mean,
Now, if you're a gal,
yeah, well. Yeah.
I have a friend who went down and spent the winter down there. He rented
And
from
they can go
Old
to
Man
reserve
Gal.
Yeah.
That 70. For that bus that we didn't put in.
Stayed at Old Man Gal's daughter's trailer, place right next to him because she wasn't going to come down.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom. Should have done it first. When it hits, it hits.
Yeah.
They have no idea. And they don't know what this does to morale. I mean, good for her for speaking up. There's a few staff that came out, not as much as I hoped. Yeah, there was like, I'd say maybe 10, well, there was 2 down here. 2, 3, yeah. But, well, they don't have the contract, which is too bad because they could have pulled the votes. Yeah, hopefully this passes. So be careful, our mics are flying. She said?
My grandson didn't cough like that.
All right. Article 13. There's a potential total for 74 ballots. We had a total ballots cast of 66, 37 yes, 29 no. The motion carries. I will repeat this. Article 13, 37 yes, 29 no. There's a total of 66 ballots cast, total of 74 potential voters here. The amount was $4,595,383.69. So that was the original amount less the 70,000. Article 14. To see what sum the RSU will authorize the school board to expend for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2024 from the RSU's contribution to the total cost of funding public education from pre-kindergarten to grade 12 as described in the Essential Programs and Services Funding Act, local funds for non-state funded school construction debt services, additional local funds for school purposes under Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 15690, unexpended balances, tuition receipts, state subsidy, and other receipts for the support of school. School board recommends $22,453,164.82. Motion, please. So it's not changing. It's a main motion in the amount of. Nope. No. Is there a second? Second. It's been seconded. I will repeat that number: $22,383,164.82. That number is the $70,000 less from a previous reduction. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Article 15, to see if the RSU will raise and appropriate $150,000 from the school nutrition program with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the school nutrition program. Motion, please. So moved. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 16, to see if the RSU will appropriate $119,149.96 for adult education and raise $86,800.93 as the local share, with authorization to expend any additional, incidental, or miscellaneous receipts in the interest and for the well-being of the adult education program. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Yes, sir.
How many people have graduated from this program in the last cycle, and how many people are participating in this program currently?
Adult Ed Director, I think, will answer that question.
Yeah, hi, Jim Palmer, Adult Ed Director. So we have 10 graduates this year, which is 4 more than we had last year. Typically, on average, we graduate about 10. Our numbers were a little bit lower during COVID, but they're starting to pick back up. Our total enrollment for this year is 220 students with all our programs.
Any further questions? Yes, sir.
That's from the RSU4 catchment?
That is RSU4. We do some work, but that does their numbers.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, that didn't include the Lisbon numbers. Okay, yeah, it did not include Lisbon students.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call. Yes, ma'am.
20 students enrolled now. How many of those are of the age that would normally be regular students in the high school?
I don't have the exact number, but I would say probably about 20%. Because we have a report that we fill out 16 to 20 year old students, and so that would be the accurate number is 20%.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion regarding adult education? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 17. In addition to amounts approved in the preceding articles, shall the school board be authorized to expend such other sums as may be received from the federal or state grants or programs or other sources during the fiscal year for the school and other program purposes, provided such grants, programs, or other sources do not require the expenditure of the funds not previously appropriated. Motion, please.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries. Article 18, to see if the RSU will increase the total appropriation for the 2022-2023 adult education program from $102,461 to $152,461. Motion, please.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. Those opposed? That motion carries. That completes the warrant that we have here tonight. I will remind people that this is step one of a two-step process. I would remind people that the RSU4 budget validation referendum will be held in each of your town's polling locations on Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. With no further business, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming tonight.